with folks from these different congregations on a much broader scale around some of the issues that are important to Houston Tillotson, but also to our leaders too, who are concerned about that schools aren't underfunded, especially HBCUs and community colleges and colleges that serve lots of students. So we're going to propose that. We don't have the date worked out, but it's going to be somewhere right after spring break, but before April starts. Because the idea is if we can do that, then we can, before the end of the semester, do some meetings with state representatives, maybe State Representative Cole, who represents the East Side, maybe Congressman Doggett, maybe some folks in higher ed, to begin to advocate around funding in this legislative session or the current budget that's being put together in Congress around funding for education. So that's the idea. I know you're going to talk more about this in your classes, but we want to build more relational power across Houston Tillotson students and more CTI leaders, so that when we meet with Congressman Doggett or Representative Cole, you can say, even if it's only a group of 8 to 10, you can say we had conversations with 100 to 150, and we represent the whole university and all of Central Texas Interfaith. So that's one big next step. The other is we are still in this week in direct assistance mode, and we are delivering food and water. There are lots of apartment complexes on the east side, mobile home parks on the east side and south side that don't have running water, and their pipes are busted, and people are working jobs at restaurants or working service jobs or construction and lost a week or 2 weeks of salary. So even though HEB is stocked, lots of people can't yet buy food, and so we're delivering emergency food. So we'd like to invite anyone who likes that kind of direct assistance. We normally get word in the morning that later in the afternoon there's a shipment, and then we have a list of different complexes we go to and deliver that food. So I'm going to ask Monique if you can kind of give a contact for anyone. Is anyone interested in learning about that, in potentially volunteering? I see a couple hands. If you can either drop your name in the chat or email Monique Monique, do you have oh, there it is.
I do. It's MoniqueJ.VAS@gmail.com.
Okay. So that is, that's mobilizing people to help others, and sometimes it takes only 3 or 5 people. I see Warinda here. I see Henry here. I see Fanny here, who have done these runs. It makes the world a difference for a family that hasn't had water, running water in a week and a half. Okay. And there's some other opportunities. Last thing I'll say is we're part of a state network. And for things like funding for higher ed, we're not going to get anywhere if it's only Austin and Central Texas Interfaith, but we have 10 sister organizations. So we want to give you opportunities to see that statewide network in action and work with us. And I'm going to end and ask Professor Ceresa to maybe end with an example of how just the initial organizing in the first, last year has already started to pay off, and House meetings have started to pay off. But I'm just going to, end by saying there's lots of ways to organize. This is broad-based organizing, the way that we have found useful in the IAF. That's not to mean there aren't other effective ways, but we think we have a way that is sustainable. These institutions, these churches on the east side have been here for 100 years. We've been organizing for almost 40 years now. So we think this way of organizing is one in which we can build some long-term change. So I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Ceresa, and any closing thoughts, or do you want to end with the story of kind of where we got last year or this year with the organizing?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. I'm just struck by the simple power there is in conversation that leads to building relationships. And so this project, the university's partnership with CTI, is new, but we've had a semester of experience with this, and it started when a core group of student leaders, Kennedy Fears, Jeffrey Clements, Kaylee Norman, decided to put this to the test and brought students together for a house meeting about their experiences at the start of the semester in September, checking in about their experience, students' experience over the summer with the traumatic events of COVID, but also the brutal killing of George Floyd. It was really a traumatic moment, and there was the opportunity. Kennedy and folks felt like it was really important for us to check in with students along this line of a simple conversation, and so that was done, and the turnout was excellent. There was maybe almost up to 70 students, and I know some of you here participated in those. But then that began the relationship, because these leaders, the student leaders, met with CTI folks over the summer, learning how to do house meetings. And we got a chance to impress upon CTI, what our students are capable of. Then we had this house meeting. Then students from the house meeting got to participate in the CTI event. That was a big public event where there were Congress people. It was before the elections. And one of our students got to speak, and the president of the university attended and saw what an impressive performance our student did. And after that, then the university president and the Dr. Vanderpoy called me up and said, listen, we want to be responsive to things we're hearing that are happening to students. Can you and your leaders bring together the student body so the administration can talk to them about what we want to do and how we can move together? And so before the end of the semester, those student leaders did that, brought students together to an SGA meeting. And I heard that things like that was the best SGA meeting that was had in a long time. But the fact that the university reached out to me and to students because they demonstrated what they could do is an example on our own turf on the university campus, the way that this method works. Yeah. Building relationships, taking responsibility for your people, which is what these leaders did. Kennedy, Jeffrey, Kaylee took responsibility for student body and brought the student body together. And so, I mean, that was a lasting impression about what's already happened and what can happen. Can you imagine when we begin to connect up with the other institutions of CTI around an agenda that represents our interests? It's going to be, I think, potentially, very, very powerful experience for everybody. So I'm really excited about this. Thank you so much.
Great. Well, with that, I think, hopefully this was a good introduction session to folks or refresher from some of you who have been participating. We're looking forward to coming together again with probably a much wider group of Central Texas Interfaith leaders to do these conversations around higher ed funding. And we don't have a date yet, but think of that time when you come back from spring break and kind of the end of March. So we still have a month or so of the legislative session. So with that, I will say thank you on behalf of the CTI folks that are here. CTI folks, we can kind of go back to our other Zoom link before, just to wrap up, and we'll give this back to Professor Sarissa. We can do our follow-up on the other link, and Professor Robert, you're welcome to join us on that too. We'll send it to you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Let me leave this link open for a few minutes. If any students after CTI folks say goodnight, if any of my students want to hang out for a few minutes and just chat, we can also do that. So I'll keep the channel open, and thanks CTI for being here and for the partnership. We're looking forward to it.
Great, thanks. Bye.
Have a good night.
Anybody who'd like to hang out for a few minutes and just sort of chat, you're welcome to stay.
Oh, they didn't really well, she didn't really mention it, Liz, but in our group we also talked about how the police engagement with the communities